My name is Glenda Harrison, and I am 65 years old. I worked as a lawyer at a small firm here in Millerville, Pennsylvania for 32 years, and I have been retired for 4 years now. My husband, Ronald, passed away 2 years ago, and I have been living alone in our large house ever since. Ronald and I had one son, Colin, who is 40 years old. He is married to Brittany, and they have 2 children, Lillian, who is 8, and Ethan, who is 6. Colin works as a manager at an insurance company, and they live 20 minutes away from me. On that Saturday morning in early October, I woke up as usual at 6:30. Old habits die hard. I had been getting up early for over 30 years to get to work, and now my body continued to live according to the same schedule. I brewed coffee in the old coffee maker Ronald and I bought 20 years ago and sat down in the kitchen with my cup, looking out the window at the autumn maple trees in the yard. The house seemed especially quiet, too quiet for such a large 4-bedroom house with a spacious living room. Ronald always said we bought this house with a large family in mind, but we never had more than one child. I picked up the newspaper from the porch and glanced at the news, but my thoughts kept wandering. This had been happening a lot lately. I would start reading or watching TV and then find myself thinking about something completely different, usually about how the house was too big for one person, how the heating bills were horrendous in the winter, how I had to hire people to clean the gutters or paint the fence. The phone rang around 10 in the morning, and I immediately recognized the voice of my older sister Vivian from Portland. Vivian was 3 years older than me, but she always seemed more energetic and decisive. "Hi, Glenn. How are you? What are you doing?" "Sitting, drinking coffee, reading the newspaper. What else is there to do in this weather?" I glanced at the gray sky outside the window. "Are you feeling down again?" Vivian knew me like the back of her hand. "Listen, have you thought about selling that huge house? Why do you need so much space?" I sighed. This wasn't the first time we'd brought it up since Ronald died. "Viv, Ronald and I lived here for 28 years. All our memories are here. This is where Colin took his first steps, where we celebrated all our birthdays and Christmases. You can take your memories with you. A house is just walls and a roof. You could buy something smaller, cozier, or even move closer to me, to Oregon. The climate is milder here, and I'm not getting any younger. It would be great if we lived nearby. But Colin and the grandchildren are here. I can't leave them. How often do you see them? Once a week? Twice? Glenn, you're spending the best years of your retirement sitting in an empty house waiting for rare visits from your family." My sister's words hurt me because there was some truth in them. Colin came by irregularly, usually when he needed to drop off the kids. He rarely called, mostly on holidays or when something happened. It's not that simple, Viv. You can't just turn your whole life upside down. You can if you want to. Remember when I decided to leave the hospital and move to Portland? I was scared too, but I've never regretted it. We talked for another 20 minutes or so about various things. Her new hobby of gardening, how she was fixing up the little house she had bought after her divorce from Walter, her neighbors, the weather. Vivian told me about a group of retirees she went hiking with around Portland, a book club where they discussed contemporary literature and the painting classes she had signed up for. "My days are all planned out," she said. "I wake up in the morning and know that the day will be interesting." "What do you do?" "Well, I go to the store. Sometimes I meet Norma Peterson. Remember her? She used to be a secretary at the school. I watch TV, read." "That's all?" "That's all," I admitted, realizing how boring it sounded. After I hung up, the house was quiet again, and I felt the silence pressing down on me even more than usual. I walked around the house, peeking into Colin's room, which hadn't been touched since he moved out 20 years ago. Baseball posters still hung on the walls, and the trophies he had won on the school team stood on the shelf. The guest bedrooms were filled with old stuff, boxes of documents I'd been meaning to sort through but never got around to. Around noon, Colin's familiar gray sedan pulled up to the house. I looked out the window and saw him getting out of the car with his children. Lillian was dragging a pink backpack, and Ethan was clutching his stuffed dinosaur named Rex, which he had been carrying around for a year. "Hi, Mom." Colin kissed me on the cheek when I opened the door. "Can you watch the kids until tonight? Brittany and I have things to do in town." "Sure." I hugged my grandchildren, breathing in the scent of children's shampoo and freshness. "Come on in, I was just about to cook something." Colin was calm and looked like his usual self, wearing jeans and a plaid shirt, his hair slightly tousled. He worked a lot, and you could tell by his tired eyes and the slight wrinkles around them, but he was always patient with the kids. Lately, though, I'd noticed that he'd become more reserved, less talkative than before. "Thanks, Mom. I'll pick them up at 7, okay? We need to go to the realtor to look at a house." "Are you buying a new one?" I asked, surprised. "No, what are you talking about? I'll tell you later." He waved his hand as if he didn't want to go into details. After Colin left, I took the children to the kitchen. Lillian was already quite tall for her 8 years, with long brown hair that she liked to braid. She was wearing jeans and a pink t-shirt with a unicorn on it. Ethan was the complete opposite, small, stocky, with a mop of blonde hair and perpetually dirty knees. He was wearing a dinosaur t-shirt and a denim jumpsuit. "Grandma Glenda, what's for dinner?" Ethan asked, climbing onto a chair at the kitchen table. "What would you like? I can make pancakes, French toast, or peanut butter sandwiches." "Pancakes!" they shouted in unison. "With syrup," Ethan added. "And berries," Lillian requested. I took the flour, eggs, and milk out of the refrigerator. The children watched with interest as I mixed the batter, and Lillian even helped me crack the eggs, tapping the shells very carefully. "Grandma, why do you live alone in such a big house?" Lillian asked unexpectedly, stirring the batter with a wooden spoon. The question caught me off guard. The children rarely asked such serious questions. They were usually interested in more specific things, what we were going to do, what we were going to eat, whether they could watch cartoons. "Well, you know, your grandfather and I bought this house a long time ago when your dad was little, like you. Now your grandfather is gone, but the house is still here. Aren't you bored all alone?" "Sometimes it's quiet, but I'm used to it." "Why don't you move in with us? We have a sofa in the living room. You could sleep there." Ethan looked up from his dinosaur. "Yes, Grandma. Then you could read us stories every night." Their offer was so sincere and simple that it tugged at my heartstrings. Children didn't understand the complexities of adult life. Everything seemed so obvious to them. "That's very sweet of you," I said, flipping a pancake in the pan. "But you don't have much room in your house, and I'm used to living in my own house." "But there are so many empty rooms here," insisted Lillian. "Dad showed me the room where he lived when he was little, and there are 2 rooms upstairs that no one lives in." "That's true," I agreed. "The house is really big." We had pancakes with maple syrup and frozen berries for breakfast, which I always kept in the freezer, especially for visits from my grandchildren. Ethan smeared syrup all over his face, while Lillian carefully cut her pancake into small pieces like a proper lady. "Grandma, can we look at the old photos?" Lillian asked when we finished eating. "Of course, I have some albums in the living room." We went into the living room and I took several photo albums from the shelf. The children sat down on either side of me on the sofa, and we began to flip through the pages. "Is that Dad?" Ethan asked in surprise, pointing to a photo of a young Colin sitting on a bicycle in the yard. "Yes, he was about the same age as you are now." "He's so small and skinny." "Who's that?" Lillian pointed to a photo of Ronald and me standing arm in arm next to a young oak tree in the yard. "That's me and Grandpa when we first moved into this house. Look how small that tree was, and now it's huge." We looked at the photos for almost an hour. The children asked lots of questions about what the house used to look like, why Dad had such funny hairstyles, and who all the people in the family photos were. I told them about their grandparents, whom they didn't remember, about family traditions, and how we celebrated Christmas and birthdays. "Why did you and Grandpa only have 1 child?" Lillian asked with the directness that is characteristic of children. "We really wanted more children, but it turned out that we only had Dad, but we loved him very much and tried to give him the best of everything." "How much do Mom and Dad love us?" "Just like that." After the photos, I took out an old box of board games that I had bought for Colin. The children chose Monopoly, and we settled down on the floor near the coffee table. "I'll be the banker," Ethan announced. "You don't even know how to count," Lillian snorted. "I can. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. "What's next?" Ethan thought for a moment and looked at me with pleading eyes. "Okay," I interjected. "Ethan will help me with the bank, and Lillian will keep track of the rules." We played for almost 2 hours. The children constantly argued about who had stopped where, how much money each of them was owed, and whether it was possible to buy houses if there were no hotels on the lot. Lillian was a more strategic player and bought real estate deliberately, while Ethan just wanted to own all the bright lots, especially the railroads. "Grandma, are you rich?" Ethan asked unexpectedly, counting his toy money. "Why do you ask?" "Well, you have such a big house. Our house is small." "A house is not a measure of wealth, dear. Your grandfather and I saved money for many years to buy this house. Your parents are still young. They have their whole lives ahead of them. But Dad told Mom that we don't have enough money," Ethan continued with the innocence with which children repeat what they hear, "and that the bank might take our house if we don't pay." Lillian tugged at her brother's sleeve. "Ethan, don't talk about that. Why not?" "Mom and Dad don't like us talking about money." I felt a slight uneasiness. So Colin really was having problems if the children had heard about it. "Don't worry," I said, trying to sound calm. "Grown-ups sometimes worry about money, but that's normal. Your parents will find a way to solve any problems." "Grandma, can we go out to the yard?" Ethan asked when he got tired of playing. "Sure, just make sure you dress warmly." I helped them find their jackets and walked them out to the yard. It was cool outside, but the sun peeked through the clouds from time to time, turning the yellow and red maple leaves golden. There was an old maple tree in our yard, under which Ronald had once built a swing set. The ropes had darkened with age, and the wooden seat was covered with moss, but the swing was still sturdy. The children took turns swinging, while I sat on the porch in an old wicker chair and watched them. Ethan swung with gusto, throwing his head back and squealing with delight, while Lillian preferred to swing gently, talking to her imaginary friend. "Lillian, tell me how school is going," I asked. "Fine. We have a new math teacher, Mrs. Johnson. She's strict but fair. She doesn't go easy on anyone, but she explains things clearly. And we're studying the history of Pennsylvania in social studies class." "That's interesting. What did you learn?" "That the Lenape Indians used to live here, and then the Europeans came and founded colonies, and that Philadelphia was the first capital of America until Washington was built." "Good for you. You have a good memory." We also learned how coal was mined in our region. The teacher says that many of our grandfathers and great-grandfathers worked in the mines. Meanwhile, Ethan got off the swing and found a long stick in the yard, which he immediately declared to be a sword. He waved it around, imagining himself a knight fighting invisible dragons. "There's a new boy in my class," Lillian continued, jumping off the swing. "His name is Max Anderson, and he moved here from New York. His dad got a job at our bank. Max is very smart. He's the best at math, but he's a little sad. He probably misses his old friends." "Have you made friends with him?" "I'm trying. Yesterday I gave him half of my sandwich for lunch because he forgot his money at home. I also showed him the library and told him which books were the most interesting. I liked that Lillian was growing up to be a kind and caring girl. There was something about her that reminded me of myself at that age, a desire to help others, especially those who seemed lonely or sad." "What does he like to do?" "Read. He's already read all the Harry Potter books. He's also a good artist. He showed me his drawings. He draws really beautiful dragons and castles." "Maybe you could invite him over sometime? I could show him pictures of our town when it was founded. I have an interesting book about the history of Millerville." "Really? Can I read it?" Lillian asked excitedly. "He loves history." We talked in the yard for about an hour. Ethan put on a whole show where he was a brave knight. Lillian was a princess, and I was a wise queen who gave advice. Then the children found some beautiful autumn leaves and decided to make a herbarium out of them. I brought some old books from the house, and we carefully placed the leaves between the pages. Towards evening, we returned to the house. The children were tired and hungry, so I made them a light dinner of macaroni and cheese, which they loved, and a vegetable salad. Ethan, as usual, ate only the macaroni and left the vegetables untouched, but Lillian obediently ate everything on her plate. "Grandma, can we watch cartoons?" Ethan asked. "Let's wash the dishes first, then we'll watch." The children helped me clear the table, and then we settled down in front of the TV in the living room. I found a children's channel showing old Disney cartoons. The children watched The Lion King, and I watched their faces lit up by the blue light of the screen and thought about how quickly they were growing up. After the cartoon, I suggested reading fairy tales. The children chose a picture book that I had bought for Colin many years ago. Ethan asked for the story about the 3 little pigs, which he knew almost by heart, but he listened with interest anyway. Lillian wanted something more serious, so I read her a few chapters from Alice in Wonderland. She listened very attentively and asked questions about why Alice fell down the rabbit hole, what all the strange characters meant, and why everything in the story was so illogical. "Grandma, have you ever wanted to be in a fairy tale?" she asked when I closed the book. "You know, when I was little, about your age, I thought that something magical could happen around every corner. I looked for secret doors, talked to animals, and hoped to meet a fairy or a wizard. But then you realize that real life can be just as interesting as any fairy tale. Do you still think that?" I wondered. Was my life interesting now? Lonely evenings, rare meetings with friends, occasional visits from children and grandchildren, television, books, trips to the store. My life is calmer now, but that has its own charm. And then I have you, my beloved grandchildren. Isn't that magic? The children smiled broadly, and Ethan hugged me tightly. "We love you too, Grandma." Around 7 in the evening, the sound of a familiar engine could be heard in the yard. Colin parked and walked to the door. He looked more tired than he had in the morning and a little tense. "How's it going? Did the kids behave?" he asked, kissing me on the cheek. "Great. We played, went for a walk, read stories, looked at old photos." "Thanks, Mom. You were a big help." While the kids were gathering their things, Colin and I stood in the kitchen talking. I noticed that he ran his hand through his hair several times, a gesture he had made since childhood when he was nervous. "Colin, is everything okay? Ethan said something today about the bank and house payments." My son hesitated and looked away, toward where the children were putting their toys in their backpacks. "Kids hear a lot of things. Don't worry about it. But if you're having problems, you know you can come to me, right?" "Mom, everything's fine. Just a temporary setback. Everyone goes through them." "How's Brittany? Did she find a job?" "Not yet. The job market isn't very good right now, especially for accountants. Many companies are downsizing or outsourcing their accounting, but she's trying hard, going to interviews every week." "How's work?" "Fine. Too fine, actually. Lots of insurance claims, especially after those storms in August. People are filing for damage, and we have to check and assess everything. There's plenty of work, but the pay isn't keeping pace with the workload." He seemed even more tense when he talked about work. I wanted to ask him more, but didn't press him. Colin had always been secretive, even as a child, reluctant to share his problems, preferring to solve everything himself. "Dad, can we visit Grandma again next weekend?" asked Lillian, running into the kitchen with her backpack on her shoulders. "We'll see, Princess. Maybe." The week passed quietly and steadily. I met Norma Peterson at a cafe where we drank coffee and discussed the town news. Norma told me about her grandchildren who lived in Pittsburgh, and I shared my impressions of Lily and Ethan's visit. At home, I read a new novel I had borrowed from the library, watched the evening news, and tried not to think about Vivian's words about moving. On Wednesday evening, I talked to my sister on the phone. She told me about her plans for the weekend. A group of retirees was going on a hike to some waterfalls half an hour's drive from Portland. "Glenn, you should see how beautiful it is here," Vivian said. "Autumn in Oregon is really special, and the climate is milder than in Pennsylvania. The winters aren't as harsh." "Our winters aren't that bad either," I replied, looking out the window at the maple tree in the yard, which had already shed half its leaves. "But you still have to heat that huge house and pay for gas and electricity. Here, I have a small house and my utility bills are negligible." Every conversation with my sister inevitably came down to the same topic, and I knew she was genuinely concerned about me, but making such a decision was not as easy as she thought. On Friday, around 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I heard the sound of a car in the yard. Looking out the window, I saw Colin's gray sedan, but this time he wasn't alone. Brittany was with him. My daughter-in-law rarely visited, mostly for holidays or family celebrations. They walked slowly toward the house, talking quietly, their expressions serious. I opened the door before they knocked. "Hi, Mom." Colin kissed me on the cheek, but it felt formal. "Can we come in? We need to talk to you." "Of course, come in. Hi, Brittany." My sister-in-law nodded and smiled faintly. Brittany was 37, a petite blonde with short hair who always took care of her appearance. Today she was wearing dark blue pants and a white blouse, but she wasn't as immaculate as usual. Her blouse was slightly wrinkled, and there were dark circles under her eyes. "How are the kids?" I asked as I showed them into the living room. "At school," Colin replied curtly. "My colleague Jennifer is picking them up, and they'll play with her kids until we get back." We sat down in the living room, they on the sofa, I in my favorite armchair. An awkward pause ensued, which Colin broke. "Mom, we need to have a serious talk." He looked at his wife as if seeking support. "We're having financial problems." I nodded, indicating that I was ready to listen. Deep down, I had been expecting this conversation since last Saturday, when Ethan let slip about the bank and the payments. "The thing is, Brittany lost her job 3 months ago," Colin continued. "The company she worked for was bought by a larger firm, and the new owners cut the entire accounting department." "I'm so sorry," I said, turning to my sister-in-law. "That must have been unexpected." Brittany spoke for the first time. "They gave us only 2 weeks' notice. The severance pay was symbolic. I started looking for a new job right away, but the market is very competitive right now. There are dozens of applicants for every position. What about unemployment benefits?" "I'm getting some, but it's not nearly enough," Brittany said, nervously fiddling with the strap of her purse. "We used to live on 2 salaries, and everything was planned out. Mortgage payments, car loans, insurance, school expenses for the children, groceries, clothing." Colin took over. "My salary is enough to cover my current expenses, but my mortgage payment is $1,200 a month, plus property taxes and home insurance. In the end, almost half of my income goes to housing. What about the bank? Can't you negotiate a loan restructuring?" "We tried," Brittany sighed. "But we don't have the best credit history. A couple of years ago, we missed a few payments when Colin was sick and on sick leave. The bank is willing to meet us halfway, but the terms will be even worse. They'll extend the loan term and increase the interest rate." "And how much do you owe?" Colin cleared his throat awkwardly. 2 months. The bank has already sent a warning. If we don't pay off the debt soon, foreclosure proceedings will begin." My heart sank. My son could lose his home, and my grandchildren would be left without a roof over their heads. "What do you want from me?" "Mom, we understand that you're not in the best financial situation after Dad's funeral and all the medical expenses. But maybe you could lend us some money, at least for a few months, until Brittany finds a job?" I was silent, thinking about their request. After Ronald's death, our savings really took a hit. The funeral cost $7,000, plus medical bills for the last months of his life, which weren't covered by insurance. My pension was modest, about $12,200 a month, which was enough to cover my living expenses, but I had virtually no savings. "How much do you need?" "At least $3,000 or $4,000 to pay off the debt and get by for another month or two," Colin said. "I don't have that kind of money," I admitted honestly. After my dad's funeral, I had less than $1,000 left in my account. I have enough to live on, but I don't have any spare cash. Their faces fell. Brittany lowered her head, and Colin ran his hand through his hair, a gesture I had known since he was a child. "Then we have another idea," he said after a pause. "But it's more radical." "Like what?" "Mom, you live alone in a huge house. 4 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a large living room, a dining room, a basement, an attic. It's too much for one person, and it's expensive to maintain. Heating, electricity, taxes, repairs." I already knew where he was going with this, but I said nothing. "We suggest you sell the house," Colin continued. "The house is in good condition, the lot is large, and the neighborhood is quiet. The realtor valued it at $250,000. Maybe we can even get more for it." "And then what?" I asked quietly. "With that money, we can pay off our mortgage. Only $120,000 left. And with the rest, we can buy you a nice apartment. A 2 or even 3-bedroom apartment in a new neighborhood. Everything there is modern, nothing needs to be repaired, the utility bills are lower, and it's easier to maintain." Brittany looked up at me for the first time. "Glenda, we realize we're asking a lot, but think about it. It really will be easier for you in an apartment. You won't have to worry about the drains getting clogged or the heating breaking down, and we would be immensely grateful to you." This is the house I've lived in for 28 years, I said slowly. All my memories of life with Ronald are here. This is where Colin grew up. Mom, they're just walls, my son objected. Your memories will stay with you wherever you live. A house can be replaced. For you, maybe, but not for me. But be practical, Brittany interjected. You're not a young woman anymore. What will you do if something happens? What if you get sick or injured? In an apartment, you have neighbors, a concierge, a management company. Here, you're all alone. I have friends, I have Colin. Colin lives 20 minutes away, insisted her daughter-in-law. What if there's a blizzard or black ice in winter? What if your heat or electricity is cut off? I was silent, digesting their words. On the one hand, their reasoning made sense. The house was indeed large and required maintenance. On the other hand, it was my home, the place where I felt at home. Think of it as an investment in your grandchildren's future, added Colin. If we lose the house, the children will have to change schools, friends, their whole familiar environment. This way, they'll stay in the same neighborhood, in the same school. And we'll be able to visit you more often, added Brittany. If you live closer to us, the kids can come over after school and we'll see each other every weekend. Those words hit me hard. It was true that I didn't see my grandchildren very often, and the prospect of seeing them more often was tempting. I need some time to think about it, I finally said. Of course, Mom. We understand that this is a serious decision, but we don't have much time. The bank has given us 2 more weeks, 3 at most. What if I say no? Colin and Brittany exchanged glances. Then we'll have to declare bankruptcy, said my son. We'll lose the house and ruin our credit rating for good. The kids would have to move in with my friends or, I don't know, rent something cheap on the outskirts. Colin, are there really no other options? Maybe take out a loan against your house? Mom, we already owe more on the mortgage than the house is worth. Real estate in our neighborhood has gone down in value over the last couple of years. The bank won't give us another loan. We spent another 10 minutes discussing the details of their financial situation. The picture really did look bleak. Brittany talked about how hard it was to find work in their small town, especially with her specialty. Colin said his salary hadn't increased in the last 3 years, even though his workload had increased. Okay, I said finally. I'll think about it, but I really need some time. Thanks, Mom, Colin said, standing up and hugging me. We know we're asking a lot, and we'll be grateful for whatever you decide. Brittany also stood up and shook my hand uncertainly. Glenda, I know this is difficult, but believe me, if we had any other option, we wouldn't bother you. After they left, I sat in the living room for a long time thinking about the conversation. On the one hand, I felt sorry for my son and grandchildren. Losing a home at their age was a serious blow. On the other hand, selling the house where I had spent most of my adult life seemed unthinkable. I walked through the rooms, looking at them with new eyes. The house was indeed large. I rarely used the guest bedrooms. The basement was just for storing old things, and the dining room was only used when we had guests, which was not often. But it wasn't just a house. It was the place where Ronald read the newspaper in the morning, where we celebrated New Year's and birthdays, where Colin took his first steps, where my husband and I dreamed about the future. Every room held memories. Around 7 in the evening, I called Norma Peterson. We had been friends for over 15 years, ever since our husbands worked together in the same union. Norma had always been a level-headed woman, and I valued her opinion. Hi, Norma. Are you busy? Of course not, Glenn. How are you? I've got a problem. Can we talk? Sure. What's going on? I told her about Colin and Brittany's visit, their financial problems, and their offer to sell the house. Norma listened attentively, occasionally asking clarifying questions. And what do you think about that? She asked when I finished. To be honest, I don't know. On the one hand, I feel sorry for them. Colin is my only son, and the children, they're not to blame. On the other hand, selling the house... Glenn, are you sure they're telling you the truth about their financial situation? The question caught me off guard. What do you mean? Well, people sometimes exaggerate their problems to get sympathy, especially when they're asking for money. Norma, this is my son. He wouldn't lie about something like that. Maybe not lie, but he might paint the situation in a more dramatic light than it really is. Listen, have you checked how much your house is worth? Colin said the real estate agent valued it at $250,000. Did you talk to the real estate agent yourself? No. See? Maybe the house is worth more. Or maybe there are other ways to solve their problems that they haven't considered. Norma was right. I had been too trusting and hadn't asked the important questions. What do you suggest? First, don't make a decision right away. Second, check all the information yourself. Find out the real value of the house, see what apartments are selling in the city, and for how much. Third, think about your own interests, not just their problems, but their family. Glenn, you have a right to a happy retirement too. If you sell the house and move into an apartment and then realize it was a mistake, there's no going back. You can only sell a house once. What if they really lose their house? Then that's their problem, and they'll have to deal with it themselves. You raised Colin, gave him an education, helped him when you could. Now he's a grown man with a family. His financial problems shouldn't become yours. Norma's words were harsh, but they were true. I had helped my son my whole life, and now he was turning to me for help again. But did he have the right to demand such sacrifices from me? One more thing, Norma added. Be careful. When people are desperate, they'll do anything, even the people closest to them. What do you mean? Nothing specific. Just be on your guard. And if you decide to help them, do it through lawyers, officially, not with words or out of pity. We talked for a few more minutes, then I hung up and was left alone with my thoughts again. The house seemed even quieter and emptier than usual. It was already dark outside, and the yellow streetlights cast cozy circles of light on Maple Street. I made myself a cup of tea and sat down in Ronald's chair with it. What would my husband have said if he were alive? He was always a practical man, but at the same time, he loved Colin very much. He would probably have been torn between wanting to help his son and understanding that the house was not just a piece of real estate, but a part of our life together. I decided that tomorrow I would go downtown and talk to the real estate agent myself. I would find out the real value of the house and see what apartments were for sale. And then I would make a decision. Norma was right. There was no need to rush. I decided to spend the weekend with my grandchildren. On Saturday morning, I called Colin and offered to take the children for a day or two. Sure, Mom, he agreed quickly. That would be great. Brittany and I have things to do around the house, and the kids just get in the way. I arrived at their house around 10 in the morning. Lillian and Ethan were already waiting for me with their backpacks packed, jumping up and down happily at the door. "Grandma Glenda!" Ethan shouted, throwing himself into my arms. "Can we go to the park to swing?" "And to the movies?" Lillian added. "They're showing a new cartoon about a princess." "Of course, we'll have time for everything," I assured them. Colin carried the children's things out to the car. He looked tired, with dark circles under his eyes. "Thanks, Mom. You're a big help." "You're welcome. Have you thought about what we discussed last time?" "Yes, I have. But the decision is yours." There was a note of tension in his voice, but I didn't press him in front of the children. We drove to Millerville Central Park. The weather was cool but sunny, perfect for a walk. The park was small but well kept, with a playground, a pond with ducks, and several walking paths. The children immediately ran to the swings. Ethan, as usual, swung with gusto, while Lillian preferred the carousel. I sat on a bench nearby and watched them, thinking about my conversation with Colin and Brittany. "Grandma, why do Mom and Dad talk about money all the time?" Ethan asked suddenly, running up to me. "Grown-ups sometimes worry about things like that," I replied evasively. "Mom was crying last night. Dad hugged her and said everything would be okay." Lillian also came over to us. "Ethan, don't talk about that." "Why not? She's our grandmother." "Because your parents don't like us talking about things like that to strangers." "But Grandma isn't a stranger." I felt sad that an 8-year-old girl felt the need to hide family problems even from close relatives. "Children, don't worry," I said, hugging them both. "Your parents will overcome all difficulties. Now let's just have a good time." We fed the ducks with bread I had brought from home, then walked along the path around the pond. Ethan collected pretty pebbles, and Lillian photographed the autumn leaves with my old camera, which I had given her to play with. After the park, we went to the movie theater. The children chose a cartoon about a mermaid princess. I bought them popcorn and lemonade, and we settled into the dark theater. The The cartoon was bright and funny, and the children laughed and commented on what was happening on the screen. I watched too, but my thoughts kept returning to my son's problems. After the movie, we stopped at the supermarket for groceries and drove to my house. The children immediately suggested baking cookies. It was an old tradition that started when Lillian was very young. "Can we make star-shaped cookies?" she asked, tying on an apron. "And dinosaurs," added Ethan. I took out the cookie cutters, flour, butter, sugar, and eggs. The children enthusiastically set to work. Ethan broke 3 eggs into a bowl, but he also broke the shells, which had to be fished out with a spoon. Lillian carefully measured out the flour, trying not to spill a single crumb. "Grandma, did you know how to cook when you were little?" she asked, stirring the dough. No, I learned when I was an adult. Your great-grandmother, Ronald's mother, taught me many recipes." "Was she kind?" "Very kind, and wise. She said that family is the most important thing in life, and that you can sacrifice a lot for your family." The words I had spoken made me think. Was this what Colin had been telling me? That for the sake of my family, for the sake of my grandchildren, I had to sacrifice my home? We rolled out the dough and cut out cookies with different cookie cutters. Ethan made dinosaurs and robots, and Lillian made stars and hearts. I showed them how to decorate the cookies with powdered sugar and colored icing. "Grandma, is it true that you might move away?" Lillian asked suddenly, carefully coloring a star. "Who told you that?" "I heard Mom tell Dad that you might sell the house." "Grown-ups sometimes discuss different options," I replied evasively, "but nothing has been decided yet. If you move, can we visit you?" "Of course, dear. How often?" I could hear the anxiety in her voice, and it hurt me to think that the children were suffering because of adult problems. "As often as possible," I assured her. We spent the evening at home playing board games and watching old family videos on my laptop. The children laughed as they watched footage of their father as a little boy and their grandfather Ronald when he was still alive. "Why did Grandpa die?" Ethan asked. "He got sick. His heart stopped working." "Do you miss him?" "I miss him very much." "Does he miss you in heaven?" "I think so." On Sunday, we slept in longer than usual, then had a leisurely breakfast and played in the yard. The children played with the neighbor's cat, who often came to visit us, while I swept up the fallen leaves. Around 4 o'clock in the afternoon, it was time to take the grandchildren home. The children reluctantly gathered their things. "Grandma, can we stay one more night?" Ethan asked. "Next time, dear. Your parents are waiting for you. We're going to Colin's." When I parked near their house, my son and Brittany came out of the door. Their faces were grim. "Hi," I said, helping the children out of the car. "We had a wonderful time." "Come in, Mom," Colin said in a tone that brooked no argument. "We need to talk." The children grabbed their backpacks and ran into the house. I reluctantly followed Colin and Brittany into the living room. "Sit down," my son said, pointing to a chair. I sat down, feeling the tension growing. "Mom, it's been a week since we last talked," Colin began. "We've been waiting for your answer." "I'm still thinking." "There's not much to think about," Brittany interrupted sharply. "The situation is simple. We have a problem, you have a solution. What is there to think about?" Her tone was aggressive, and I felt something tighten inside me. "Brittany, I understand that you are having difficulties, but you have to help us." Colin raised his voice. "You are my mother." "The house is huge. You're all alone. Why does a 70-year-old woman need 4 bedrooms?" "I'm 65, not 70, I corrected, but my voice trembled. "What's the difference?" My son waved his hand. "It's not about age. The point is that you live in a house 10 times bigger than you need, and you won't help your own son." "Colin, don't yell at me." "What, you don't understand?" Brittany interjected. "We asked you nicely. We explained the situation, and you just keep thinking and thinking. It's my house, and I have the right to decide what to do with it." "What do you mean, it's your house?" my sister-in-law said angrily. "It's our inheritance. Sooner or later it'll go to Colin anyway, so why not give it to him now when he needs it?" Her words hit me like a slap in the face. "How dare you say that?" "What's the big deal?" Brittany shrugged. "I'm telling the truth. You can't live forever. We're young, we have children. We need a home more than you do." "Brittany!" Colin snapped at her, but there was no real anger in his voice. "What do you mean, Brittany? Don't we have a right to be honest? Your mother sits in a huge house like a dog in a manger and won't help her own family." "I'm not a dog in a manger," I said quietly, feeling tears welling up in my eyes. "Then prove it," said Colin. "Sell the house. Help us. We're your family. We're your blood." "What about the children?" Brittany added. "Do you want your grandchildren to end up on the street? To have to change schools, lose their friends?" "But there are other ways." "What?" Colin snapped. "We've exhausted every possibility. The banks won't give us a loan, there are no jobs, we have no other relatives. Only you can help us." "I can't sell the house," I whispered. "I can't." An ominous silence hung in the air. Colin and Brittany exchanged glances. "All right," my son said slowly. "Then we have news for you, too." "What?" "If you don't help us, you'll never see your grandchildren again." The words hung in the air like a sentence. "What?" "You heard me," Brittany said harshly. "If you don't sell the house and help us, we'll forbid the children from seeing you." "You can't do that." "We can," Colin said coldly. "They're our children, and if their grandmother doesn't want to help the family in their time of need, then they don't need a grandmother like you." "Colin, do you realize what you're saying?" "I do. I'm saying you have a choice. Either you help us, or you forget you have grandchildren." I looked at my son and didn't recognize him. Where was the boy I raised, the boy I read fairy tales to, the boy I taught to be kind and honest? "Lillian and Ethan love me. The children will get used to it," Brittany said harshly. "They're young, they'll forget quickly." "But they'll ask." "We'll tell them their grandmother moved away," Colin shrugged, "or that she's sick and can't visit." "I can't believe you're capable of this. And I can't believe my own mother is willing to throw her family out on the street for the sake of old walls." I stood up from the chair, my legs shaking. "I have to go." "Think about it," Colin said at the door. "You have 3 days. After that, our offer is off, and the children will never see you again." I walked to my car without looking back. My hands were shaking as I put the key in the ignition. Only when I drove away from their house did the tears start to flow. At home, I sat in the kitchen for a long time, crying and unable to think about anything. Then Vivian called. "Hello, Glenn?" "What's wrong? Are you crying?" Through my tears, I told my sister what had happened. Vivian listened silently, occasionally gasping in outrage. "Those bastards," she said when I finished. "How dare they talk to you like that? Viv, what should I do? I can't lose my grandchildren. You don't want to sell the house either?" "No, I don't. But if it's the only way—" "Wait, Glenn, I have an idea." "What is it?" "What if you agree to sell the house, but instead of giving them the money, you spend it on yourself?" "I don't understand." "Listen carefully. You tell them you'll sell the house and help them out. You sell the house, get the money. Then you use that money to buy a house here in Oregon and move in with me. But then they won't have money for a mortgage. Let them. After the way they treated you, they don't deserve it. Let them deal with their own problems. But my grandchildren, they'll come visit you on vacation. Trust me, when the kids are older, they'll understand who was right in this situation." Vivian's idea was bold and perhaps cruel. But after the way I was treated today, it didn't seem wrong. "Do you think it will work?" "Of course it will. The main thing is not to reveal your true plans to them. Agree to sell, and then do what you think is best." "What if they find out? What can they do? The house will be sold in your name and the money will be yours. They won't be able to do anything." We talked for another half hour, discussing the details of the plan. Gradually, I felt despair give way to determination. Maybe Vivian was right. Maybe it was time to think about myself. The day after my conversation with Vivian, I woke up with a heavy feeling in my chest, but my determination remained. My sister's plan seemed like the only way to preserve both my dignity and the possibility of seeing my grandchildren in the future. Around 10 in the morning, I dialed Colin's number. "Hello?" he answered curtly. "Colin, it's Mom. I've thought about your offer." There was a pause. I heard him walk away from someone and close a door. "So, what's your decision?" "I agree to sell the house." The relief in his voice was audible even over the phone. "Mom, thank you. You have no idea how much you're helping us." "But I have conditions," I continued calmly. "The house will be sold in my name, and I will control the money. First, I'll find a suitable apartment, and then I'll give you the rest." Of course," He quickly agreed. "The main thing is that you understand how important this is for us." "Yes, I understand. When do you plan to put the house up for sale?" "This week. I need to find a good real estate agency and have the house appraised properly. Mom, time is of the essence. The bank is breathing down our necks. Colin, if we want to get the best price, we can't rush. A good house needs to be properly marketed." He paused, apparently considering my words. "Okay. But keep me informed of every step, agreed?" "Agreed." After talking to my son, I felt a strange mixture of relief and guilt. On the one hand, I had made a decision and was no longer tormented by uncertainty. On the other hand, it was hard to deceive my own son, even after the way he had treated me. That same day, I drove to downtown Millerville to Church Street, where there were several real estate agencies. I chose Harrison & Associates, a reputable firm that had been in town for 15 years. I was greeted by a middle-aged real estate agent named Susan Miller. She was a professional and courteous woman in a business suit, with neat hair and attentive eyes. "Mrs. Harrison, tell me about your house," she asked, seating me in a chair across from her desk. I described the house: 4 bedrooms, 2.5 bathrooms, a large living room, a dining room, a kitchen, a basement, an attic, and 1/3 of an acre of land with a garden and mature trees. "Sounds lovely," Susan nodded. "Houses like this are in high demand, especially in your neighborhood. Oak Street is considered one of the best places in Millerville. What's the approximate value?" "I'd need to see the house in person, but I'd estimate it to be in the range of $270,000 to $300,000. The real estate market is pretty active right now." The amount was more than Colin had said. I wonder if he knew the real value or was deliberately underestimating it. "When would you be able to come by for a look?" "Tomorrow morning, if that's convenient for you, and tell me, why did you decide to sell the house? It will help me better present it to potential buyers." "I was widowed 2 years ago. The house has become too big for one person," I lied, repeating Colin's words. "I see. Have you found anything for yourself yet?" "Not yet. I want to sell first, then look for a new place." We agreed to meet the next day and I drove home. I spent the rest of the day in a strange daze, walking around the rooms and looking at the things I would soon have to pack. Every item held memories: old framed photographs, Ronald's books, the dishes we had received as a wedding gift. In the evening, Norma called. "Glenn, how are you? You looked upset when we saw each other at the cafe last week." "Norma, can I come over? I need to talk to someone." "Of course. Come right over." Norma lived in a small house on Willow Drive, 10 minutes away from me. She greeted me at the door with a cup of hot tea and a concerned look on her face. "What's wrong?" she asked when we settled into her cozy living room. I told her everything, about Colin and Brittany's demands, how they had spoken to me, the ultimatum about the grandchildren, Vivian's plan. Norma listened without interrupting, only shaking her head occasionally. "And you've decided to take your sister's advice?" she asked when I had finished. "Yes, the real estate agent is coming tomorrow to look at the house." "Glenn, I understand you're hurt. The way they treated you is unacceptable. But are you sure you want to do this? What else can I do? Give them money after they blackmailed me? No, of course not. But deceiving them, that's not like you." My friend's words struck a painful chord in my heart. They started the deception. Colin said the house was worth $250,000, and the real estate agent valued it at a minimum of $270,000. Maybe he just didn't know the exact price. "Norma, they threatened to take away my grandchildren. Is that normal?" "No, that's terrible. But think about the consequences. If they find out the truth, they'll never let you see Lillian and Ethan again. And if I give them the money, what will change? They'll still think they can manipulate me." Norma sighed. "You're probably right. I just feel sorry for the children. They didn't do anything wrong. I feel sorry for them too. But I can't sacrifice everything so their parents can continue to blackmail me. Where will you live while the house is being sold? That's what I wanted to ask you. Could I stay with you for a few weeks? I'll pay for utilities and groceries." "Don't be silly. You don't need to pay anything. Of course you can stay as long as you like. I have a spare room upstairs." "Thank you. And one more thing. Please don't tell anyone about my plans. Especially if Colin asks. I promise. But Glenn, think about it again. Maybe you should try talking to your son openly. Explain how his words hurt you? The time for talking is over, I replied firmly. The next morning, Susan Miller arrived. She carefully inspected the house, taking notes in her notebook and photographing every room. She paid particular attention to the condition of the roof, windows, heating, and water systems. The house is in excellent condition, she said after finishing her inspection. It's clear that it's been well cared for. The kitchen and bathrooms are modern, the floors are hardwood, and the fireplace works. And the garden is simply magnificent. Those maple trees add a special charm. And what's your estimate? I would put the price at $285,000. That's a fair price that will attract buyers but not undervalue the property. When can we put it up for sale? Tomorrow. I need to prepare the documents, take professional photos, and place an ad on the major real estate websites. How quickly do houses like this usually sell? On average, between 2 weeks and 2 months. But your house is very attractive, so I think you'll find a buyer fairly quickly. After the realtor left, I started gathering the most essential items. Clothes, documents, medicines, a few photos, and books. I left the rest for now. It was too early to pack up all my belongings. In the evening, Colin called. "Mom, how's the sale going?" "The real estate agent was here today. We're putting the house on the market tomorrow." "For how much?" $285,000. "Great, that's more than I thought." "Yes, the market is good right now." "When are you planning to move?" "I'm moving in with Norma Peterson tomorrow. That will make it easier to show the house to potential buyers." "Good idea. Mom, thanks again." "You're saving our family." My son's words cut me to the heart. There was warmth in his voice again, which had been missing during our last conversation. Did he really think it was possible to forget everything that had been said so easily? "Colin, how are the kids? Do they know about selling the house?" "They do. I explained to them that Grandma is moving into an apartment and now we'll be able to see each other more often." "And how did they react?" "Lillian was upset. She says she likes the house better than any apartment. Ethan seemed to take it well." "Can I talk to them?" "They're already asleep. Another time, okay?" The next day, I moved in with Norma. She helped me settle into the guest room on the second floor, bright and cozy, with a window overlooking a small garden. "Make yourself at home," Norma said, arranging my things in the closet. "In the meantime, tell me what you plan to do with the money from the sale." I told my friend all about Vivian's plan. Norma listened with growing surprise. "So you want to move to Oregon?" "Yes. Vivian is already looking at houses. The climate is milder there and I won't be so lonely. How will Colin find out you've left? When the deal is closed, I'll tell him the truth, that the money is for my new house and I'm moving in with my sister. He'll be furious. Let him be. After the way he treated me, I don't care." Norma shook her head. "Well, it's your choice. Just don't regret it later." The house went on the market on Thursday. Over the weekend, Susan organized an open house. I watched from a distance as different people walked through my house, discussing the layout and peeking into the closets. It was strange and painful to see strangers evaluating the place where I had spent most of my life. "There's a lot of interest," the real estate agent reported in the evening. "Several families are seriously interested. I think we'll have offers by the middle of next week." She was right. On Monday, the first offer came in, $270,000. On Tuesday, 2 more offers came in, $275,000 and $280,000. On Wednesday, the most lucrative offer arrived, $287,000 in cash, with a quick closing. "The buyers are ready to close the deal within 2 weeks, Susan reported. "Those are very good terms." "I'll take it," I said without hesitation. That evening, Vivian called. "Glenn, how's the sale going?" I accepted the offer, $287,000 in cash. "Great, I found 3 interesting options. One is especially nice, a house in Beaverton, a suburb of Portland. 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a small garden. The owners are asking $200,000, but I think we can negotiate it down to $180,000. "Sounds good. Do you want me to start negotiations?" "If everything goes well, the house will be ready by the time you arrive." "Go ahead. How much do you need to transfer to start the process?" $50,000 will be enough for the down payment and paperwork." "Okay. As soon as I get the money from the sale, I'll transfer it right away." Colin called every day to ask about the sale. I told him the truth about the offers and the procedure, but didn't mention my plans for the money. "Mom, that's just great," he said when I told him about the offer I had accepted. $287,000. That's enough to pay off our mortgage and buy you a great apartment. Yes, it should be enough, I agreed, feeling a pang of guilt. When is the closing? In a week and a half. I can't wait. Brittany has already picked out a few apartments for you. They're all in good neighborhoods, close to shops and a hospital. I was silent, not knowing what to say. Mom, are you there? Yes, I'm here. What about the paperwork? Do you need my help? No, I'm managing on my own. The real estate agent has taken care of everything. 3 weeks flew by like a day. I lived with Norma, occasionally going to my old house to pick up some things, meeting with the real estate agent and lawyer to finalize the paperwork. Norma was a discreet neighbor. She didn't pry, but she was always ready to listen and offer support. "You don't look happy," she remarked one evening as we drank tea in her kitchen. Happiness is a strong word. I feel more relieved that I've finally made a decision. Do you have any doubts? Of course I do. I've been an honest person all my life. To deceive my own son, it's hard. But he was the one who deceived you about the price of the house. Maybe he really didn't know. Or maybe he did. It doesn't matter anymore. Norma paused, then said, "You know what strikes me most about this story? That Colin doesn't understand how hard it is for you to give up the house. To him, it's just money, but to you, it's your whole life. Yes, that's probably what upsets me the most, that he didn't try to understand my feelings. What about the children? Do you think about how they'll react when they find out you've left?" That was the most painful question. I thought about Lillian and Ethan every day, imagining how they would look for me, asking their parents where their grandmother was. I think so, and it's very hard for me. But I hope that when they grow up, they'll understand why I did what I did. What if they don't? Then I'll lose them forever. But if I stay and give the money to Colin, I'll be a hostage to their blackmail. Next time they'll come with new demands. You're probably right. On the day the deal was closed, I was surprisingly calm. I met the buyers, a young family with 2 children. The husband was a doctor and the wife was a teacher. They were polite and grateful, saying they really liked the house and would take good care of it. "We plan to plant roses in the yard," said the wife, "and maybe we'll put a swing set for the kids in the same place where the old one was." "That's a good idea," I replied. "The kids will love it." The lawyer read the documents, we signed, and it was done. The check for $287,000 was in my purse. That same day, I went to the bank and transferred $200,000 to the account Vivian had opened to buy the house in Oregon. I left the rest of the money in my account for moving and initial expenses. In the evening, my sister called. "Glenn, the money's here. I'm meeting with the sellers of the house in Beaverton tomorrow. I think we'll come to an agreement quickly." "Great, when can I come?" "Everything will be ready in 2 weeks. I've already ordered furniture and started setting up utilities in your name." "Thanks, Viv. I don't know what I would do without you." "Don't be silly. We're family." After talking to my sister, Colin called. "Mom, how did the closing go?" "Fine. The papers are signed. The house is no longer mine." "Did you get the money?" "Yes." "When can we meet to discuss the details?" I paused, gathering my strength. "Colin, the procedures aren't finished yet. We need to sort out the taxes, find a suitable apartment, and organize the move. It will take a few more weeks." "But you have the money?" "Mom, we need to pay off the mortgage urgently. The bank has already started foreclosure proceedings." "I understand, but I can't give you all the money at once without securing a place to live." "How much do you need for an apartment?" "I don't know yet. I need to look at the market." "Mom, at least give me a rough estimate. 100,000, 120, maybe. Then that leaves 160 to 170,000. That's more than enough to pay off our loan. Colin, give me time to get everything organized. We'll meet in a couple of weeks and discuss everything." "Okay," he agreed reluctantly, "but don't take too long, please." After talking to my son, I felt my heart pounding with stress. It was getting harder and harder to lie, especially when I heard the relief and gratitude in his voice. But there was no turning back. On Monday morning, a week after the deal was closed, Vivian called. Her voice was excited but happy. "Glenn, I have great news. The house in Beaverton is ours. The owners agreed to $175,000, and I've already signed the preliminary contract. That's wonderful, I said, feeling a mixture of relief and anxiety. When can we move in? In a week. I ordered the main furniture. A bed, a sofa, a table, and a kitchen set. Everything will be delivered before you arrive. We'll buy the rest together. What about the house? Is it in good condition? Excellent. It was built 10 years ago. Everything is modern. There's a small garden where you can grow flowers. And most importantly, it's only a 20-minute drive from me. Thank you, Viv. I don't know how to thank you. Don't be silly. We're sisters. When are you planning to fly in? I'll buy a ticket for next week. I still need to pack and tell Colin the truth. Are you ready for that conversation? I paused. Was I ready? I had been rehearsing that conversation in my head for the last few days, but it wasn't getting any easier. Probably no one can ever be ready for something like that. But there's no way out. The important thing is to remember that you're doing the right thing. After the way he treated you, he doesn't deserve anything else. After talking to my sister, I felt a surge of determination. The plan was nearing completion, and soon I would be free of this nightmare. I started gathering the rest of my things, packing them into boxes to send to Oregon. Norma helped me, but I could tell she was worried. Glenn, aren't you afraid they'll try to find you in Oregon? What can they do? The money's already spent. The house is in my name. Legally, they can't prove anything. But Colin is your son. Sooner or later, you'll have to make peace with him. Maybe. But not until he realizes he can't treat me like an ATM. On Wednesday evening, I was sitting in Norma's kitchen drinking tea and looking at plane tickets on my laptop when I heard the familiar sound of an engine in the driveway. I looked out the window and saw Colin's gray sedan. They're here, I said quietly to Norma. Do you want me to say you're not home? No, it's time to tell the truth. Colin and Brittany walked quickly toward the house. Their faces were grim and determined. Colin knocked on the door sharply, businesslike. Mom, we know you're in there, he shouted. Open up! Norma looked at me questioningly. I nodded, and she went to open the door. Good evening, Colin, Brittany, she said calmly. What's going on? We need to talk to our mother, her son replied sharply, pushing his way into the house. Where is she? I'm here, I said, stepping into the hallway. Colin and Brittany were clearly agitated. Brittany nervously fiddled with the strap of her purse, and Colin clenched and unclenched his fists. Mom, we need to talk. Right now. Come into the living room, Norma suggested. No, Brittany said sharply. We want to talk alone. Norma is my friend, I said firmly. She can stay. We went into the living room. Colin and Brittany sat down on the edge of the sofa, and I settled into an armchair opposite them. Norma remained standing by the door. Mom, Colin began, trying to sound calm. The bank sent the final notice today. We have 3 days to pay off the debt, or they'll start foreclosure proceedings. I'm so sorry. Enough excuses, Brittany exploded. We came for the money. You sold the house a week ago. You should have the money. I have the money, I said calmly, but it's already been spent. There was a dead silence. What? Colin asked again. I said the money has been spent on a new house. What house? Brittany turned pale. A house in Oregon, near my sister Vivian. Colin slowly got up from the couch. Mom, are you kidding? No. I'm flying to Portland in 3 days. The house is already in my name. The furniture has been delivered. I'm moving. But you promised to help us, Brittany cried. You gave us your word. I promised to sell the house, and I sold it. For us. To help us. Colin began pacing the room, waving his arms. We had an agreement. We agreed that I would sell the house, but I'll decide what to do with the money. Mom, you don't understand. Colin stopped in front of me. If we don't pay off the mortgage, we'll be evicted. The kids will be homeless. That's your problem, Colin, not mine. How is it ours? Brittany squealed. You're our mother. You have to help us. After what you did to me? I stood up from the chair and looked at them. After you threatened me? After you forbade me to see my grandchildren? We didn't threaten you, Colin began. Don't lie, I interrupted him. You said outright that if I didn't sell the house, I would never see Lillian and Ethan again. And Brittany said that the house was your inheritance and I had no right to dispose of it. We were desperate. Brittany tried to justify herself. People say all kinds of things when they're upset. Yes, they do, and they act accordingly. Colin grabbed me by the shoulders. Mom, you can't do this. It's despicable. Let go of me, I said coldly. He let go of me, but his face was contorted with rage. Where's the money? I know it's here. You hid it somewhere. The money was transferred to a bank in Portland. It's not here. I don't believe you. Colin began looking around the room. Over $200,000 doesn't just disappear. Colin, calm down, Norma tried to intervene. Stay out of this, he snapped at her. This is a family matter. He went over to the dresser and started pulling out the drawers, turning everything upside down. What are you doing? Norma exclaimed. Stop that right now. I'm looking for the money. You don't transfer that kind of money just like that. She hid it somewhere. Brittany joined her husband and they began searching the living room, looking behind the sofa and turning over the cushions. Colin, stop, I shouted. You're acting crazy. Crazy? He turned to me, his face contorted with rage. How is a man who has been betrayed by his own mother supposed to behave? He grabbed a vase from the table and threw it on the floor. The vase shattered into pieces. Colin, Norma gasped. Stop it right now. But her son was out of control. He overturned the coffee table, knocked books off the shelves, and began pulling pictures off the walls. Where's the money? He shouted. Where did you hide it? Brittany ran to the kitchen and began searching there, opening cupboards and looking in jars and pots. That's everything. I'm calling the police. She grabbed the phone, but Colin snatched it out of her hands and threw it on the floor. You're not calling anyone. I'm not leaving until I find the money. He ran upstairs and I heard something crashing and breaking. Norma ran after him and Brittany continued to destroy the kitchen. Stop, I shouted. You're destroying someone else's home. We don't care, Brittany snapped. You destroyed our lives. I rushed over to the neighbors and knocked on Mrs. Rogers' door, an elderly woman who had lived next door to Norma for many years. Mrs. Rogers, call the police, I begged. Something terrible is happening at Norma's house. Hearing the noise and shouting from the house next door, the woman immediately realized the seriousness of the situation and dialed 911. 10 minutes later, 2 police cars arrived. 4 officers entered the house, where Colin was still smashing furniture upstairs and Brittany was searching the basement. What's going on here? Asked the senior officer, Sergeant Williams, whom I remembered from when he was a young patrolman. My son and his wife broke into the house and are destroying everything, I explained. They're looking for money that isn't here. Sir, come out immediately with your hands up, one of the police officers shouted upstairs. Colin came down, dirty and disheveled. Norma followed slowly behind him, pointing to the destruction in the bedroom. You are under arrest for disorderly conduct and property damage, Sergeant Williams said, handcuffing Colin. That's my mother, his son shouted. She stole our money. You can tell that at the station, the police officer replied calmly. Brittany was led out of the basement. She cried and wailed, We're going to lose our house. The children will be out on the street. Ma'am, you're under arrest too, the second officer told her. They were led to the cars. Colin turned and shouted at me, I'll never forgive you for this. Never. The cars drove away and silence fell. Norma and I stood amid the devastation and said nothing. I'm so sorry, I finally said. Your house is ruined because of me. It's not your fault, Norma replied, looking at the broken vase. I didn't expect Colin to be capable of that. Neither did I. We spent several hours cleaning up the house and assessing the damage. Not much was broken. A vase, a few plates, some furniture knocked over. The guest bedroom upstairs was the worst, where Colin had turned the mattress upside down and thrown things out of the closet. I'll pay for all the repairs, I said. No, you don't have to. I have insurance. The next day, I went to the police station to find out what would happen to Colin and Brittany. Sergeant Williams explained that they had been released on bail but were facing charges of disorderly conduct and property damage. What should I do if they come back? I asked. File for a restraining order. We can keep them from coming within a certain distance of you. I filed for a restraining order, and that evening bought a plane ticket to Portland for the next day. There was no point in waiting any longer. Norma took me to the airport. We both cried as we hugged in front of the check-in counter. Will you write? She asked. I will, and come visit me as soon as I get settled. I promise. The flight took 5 hours. I looked out the window at the clouds and thought about leaving my whole old life behind. It was scary and sad, but at the same time, it was a relief. Vivian met me at the Portland airport. She looked tanned and happy, wearing a bright jacket and jeans. "Glenn!" She hugged me tightly. "You're finally here." "Finally," I agreed. We drove through the beautiful suburbs of Portland in her car. There were green hills, neat houses, and well-kept gardens everywhere. "Here's your new home," Vivian said, stopping in front of a cute one-story house with blue shutters and a small garden in front of the entrance. The house was exactly as I had imagined it, not too big but cozy, with large windows and a covered porch. "Come in and take a look," my sister suggested. Everything inside was new and clean. A bright living room, a modern kitchen, 2 bedrooms, and a study. The furniture was simple but of good quality. "Viv, this is wonderful," I said as I walked through the rooms. "Thank you for everything." "You're welcome. Welcome home, little sister." I went to the window and looked out at the small garden with young apple trees and rose bushes. Somewhere out there, beyond the horizon, was my old life, my son, my grandchildren. Here, something new and unknown but familiar was beginning. "Do you think I did the right thing?" I asked Vivian. "I think you did what a free woman who has a right to her own life would do." Maybe she was right. Time would tell.